Hi, I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, in Malaysia, could toxic waste from a rare earth processing plant threaten the environment and the health of the people around it? Activists there think so, but the government insists it is safe. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, across the table from me as usual, catching all your questions and comments during the show. Tweet her, use the hashtag AJStream. Malika, it's pretty obvious on social media today that this is a very divisive issue among Malaysians.
Lisa, there are definitely some strong opinions there, and a lot of the tweets and comments that we're getting are in favor of the Lynas plant. For those that aren't in favor, they bring up recent history. This from Sizwina, who says, Malaysia has a history of letting corporations mismanage radioactive material. Mitsubishi's rare earth plant and Bukit Merah, for example. Now, of course, we'll get into the Mitsubishi incident later in the show, but for those of you that are at home, please join the conversation by tweeting us using the hashtag AJStream.
All right, and joining Malika and me in studio is Kian Wong. He's a journalist from Malaysia who spent the past 20 years covering stories across Southeast Asia and other regions of the world. Kian, welcome.
Thank you.
Is there a story that you think we should cover? Let us know about it via Twitter at AJStream, or even better, send us a video comment with your show pitch. To do that, just go to stream.aljazeera.com and click on that red button that you see on the right side of your screen that says record your comment, and you could be in the stream.
Hi, I'm Isaac Mao from China. I'm one of the first bloggers here in China for about 10 years. I experienced a lot of stories here in China internet development, and now I'm in the stream.
They're found in every cell phone, laptop, and tablet computer. We're talking about rare earth metals, and global demand for them has skyrocketed. Recently, the world's largest refinery of rare earth has begun operating in Malaysia. That refinery is owned by the Australian mining corporation Lynas, which says it's offering the Southeast Asian country huge economic opportunities and a stake in a fast-growing industry. But Malaysian activists say toxic and radioactive waste from the Lynas plant threatens to destroy their environment, creating a social cost that will last long after profits are made. So, what risks are involved in Malaysia's rare earth industry? And are the right precautions being taken to prevent exposure to people and harmful environmental effects? Here to address these issues is Tan Boon Teat. He is the chairman of the activist group Save Malaysia, Stop Lynas. Mr. Tan is a resident of Kuantan, Malaysia, where the Lynas rare earth refinery is located. Also joining us via Skype from Hong Kong is Nick Curtis. He is the executive chairman of the Lynas Corporation. Nick and Tan Boon Teat, welcome to you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Tan, I want to start with you. The Lynas refinery could provide close to 500 jobs. It's poised to make Malaysia an attractive location for other investors, substantially boosting its economy and its global profile. Why are activists and locals opposing the project?
I think there are a few things I have to clarify first. Lynas does not provide 500 jobs. In its own document, it says that it provides only 350 jobs, and it's going to get a 10-year tax break for whatever money they make. There won't be any taxes to be paid by Lynas to the government. So all the people here, they get is a regular job in the factory or in the plant, and besides that, we have tons and tons of radioactive waste being stacked at the back of the plant. And then the company has not come out nor put up a viable proposition how to deal with this radioactive waste. Right at this moment, the people have not been told how they're going to deal with the permanent disposal of this radioactive waste. And although Lynas has given a written commitment to ship the radioactive waste out of the country, but we just don't see how they could do that. During our visit to the recent visit to the Australian Parliament, we were told that APANSA, the regulatory body that regulates the radioactive materials and waste that we shipped to Australia, did not give any green light for Lynas to ship back the radioactive waste from Malaysia.
All right. So, Nick, activists, they're opposed to your operation. They say yours is a wealthy foreign company. It's using their country as an industrial dumping ground. How do you respond to that? And how does Lynas plan to deal with the waste from the refinery?
Yes, thanks, Lisa. I mean, that is a very good political hook line, I accept.
it doesn't reflect reality in any way. To a couple of specific issues Mr. Tan raised, there is a simple economic fact that 350 jobs are created by direct employees, but we have subcontractors, we have supply chain initiation like acid plants and other industrial plants that are growing as Malaysian businesses. We think we're creating about 1,500 jobs, but that's not really why we are saying this is beneficial for Malaysia. We think there is a strong multiplier effect industrially in terms of value add. We did not go to Malaysia for the perceived weaknesses that Mr. Tan claims Malaysia has and the activists claim Malaysia has in terms of its government control. We find in Malaysia some of the most developed regulatory environmental laws in the world. We are very happy to adhere to all of the international and Malaysian environmental standards. They are very thorough. We have been investigated by 6 different independent agencies. I doubt whether any of the industrial operations in Malaysia have ever had such environmental scrutiny. We're pleased with that. We maintain an absolute commitment to safety, environment, and shared value with our communities. We will be an important part of that community, and we feel very comfortable that we will have a net aggregate benefit to the community. Let me deal with the issue of radioactive waste, as it's so called. We do bring to Malaysia some molecules, very low ratio, of thorium and uranium in our material that are naturally occurring in the ground at Mount Weld. They are not comparable to some of the other incidents in Malaysia, and these materials we deal with professionally, properly, to standards of radio emissions which are below acceptable global standards for public exposure. So we don't believe there is any risk to community. We would not accept risk to community in our operation.
Well, Kian, I want to bring you in here because our community members are echoing something that Mr. Tan said a little bit earlier. This, on Twitter, the ore content of Lynas was never transparently disclosed to convince the public. And we got a Facebook comment here from Mohammed who says, Malaysia must not allow foreigners to use it. Rather, Malaysian companies should use the opportunity with an assurance that it doesn't affect the normal life of its citizens. What both seem to be saying is something that you told our producers a little bit earlier, that there's this crisis of credibility. They don't feel like they've been consulted. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think this is something that has been occurring very much since that great break, if you like, in politics as normal in Malaysia when Anwar Ibrahim was sacked as Deputy Prime Minister by Dr. Mahathir way back in 1998, and the rise of this so-called Reformasi movement. And since that time, I mean, this has been over a decade in the building of a new type of Malaysian politics, a new type of different civil society movements, as we've seen, that have taken to the streets, whether it's the electoral reform movement called Bersih, or, as we know in the past week, this Lynas march, if you like, across the country, which drew thousands of people as well. It speaks to, I think, this problem of a newly middle-class society like Malaysia not being able to get satisfaction, if you like, to their queries and to their answers, and not being consulted adequately enough as they feel they must in the political process. And in some ways, the federal government, in approving this project in the way they have done it in traditional business as usual methods, has undermined politically, I guess, the saleability of such a project to the community, over and above, of course, the various environmental and community concerns of displacements and toxicity.
Mr. Tan, regardless of whether or not the public at large has been consulted, there have been a number of independent groups, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, that have assessed the Lynas operation, and they've said that the plant is perfectly safe, that it meets very high standards. Why don't you believe them?
It is a question of whether I believe or not. Let me give you a version of how this International Atomic Energy Agency came into the scene. Now, when we first discovered Lynas' presence in our backyard, we went to the parliament to present a memo to our prime minister. And then until today, he has not responded to our memo. Next, when we organized rallies around the town in various venues, Then the government responded by saying that they're going to hold public consultation sessions. The government has planned 6 sessions, and immediately after the second session, they canceled the rest because they couldn't take the objection from the public. And then soon after that, the government finds that the only solution may be to appoint an international accredited institutions like IAEA to hold a public hearing. And then let me tell you what happened in the public hearing. We were invited to make our submissions as well. On the day I was supposed to make the submission, another group of anti-Linus movement went into the hall to give their submission. When they emerged from the hall, the leader of the group was almost strangled by thugs who were sent by the political party in power. As a result, I told them, since my personal guarantee cannot be a guarantee, I'm not going to make my submission. That was about IAEA. Basically, we regard them as international nuclear salesmen. They do not have much credibility. So when they make the visit to the plant, it was merely a bus tour. They didn't even get down from the bus. This is not from my pure conjecture. It is a report from the newspapermen and reporters who follow the agency's representatives on the tour. So they came out to conclude that the plant was safe. That was when the plant was still under construction. Despite that, the IAEA came out with 11 recommendations, one of which is that Linus is required to have more consultation with the local public and to be transparent in every aspect, especially the flow of information. Until today, I have written to the CEO of Linus asking for engagement. Until today, they have not replied. And then as far as we are concerned, we were actually branded as outlaws by Linus. And today...
So wait, so you're asking for a meeting with Nick Curtis?
Yes, I asked for a meeting with the local CEO of...
How about that, Nick? Can we get a meeting between Tan's group and you?
Yeah, I have offered this on many occasions. May I don't think I will bother trying to argue every misrepresentation Mr. Tan makes. I will make a couple of points. One is, his agenda focuses on the government. I agree with Yok's point. There is a civil society movement and a middle class which is alienated from the system in Malaysia, so it is in Egypt, so it is around the world. It's a modern occurrence. We welcome engagement with respectable civil society movements. We have invited Mr. Tan and his team to our plant. I invited him as recently as our AGM, where he came and wanted to make his points about Save Malaysia, Stop Linus. My only condition for him visiting our plant, which he was at the other day, by the way, my only condition for visiting our plant is, in fact, that he adhere to our safety standards that we would have with any visitor. Mr. Tan's counter request to us was no, he wants to bring his own video team in and walk the plant freely without any Linus people present. From a safety point of view, we simply couldn't do that. But we welcome engagement. We are transparent. To say that we've come in secretly is a serious misrepresentation of the fact. Please focus on the government, but let's also focus on the facts of what Linus has done.
Well,
We've done more than
15,000. Among our community members. Lawyers for Liberty just tweeted in, only the ruling party, cronies, and families will benefit. Malaysia has a terrible record on maintenance and safety. Remember the Asian rare earth scandal? And she's, of course, referring to the Mitsubishi plant. But Kian, I'd like you to listen to this video comment. This is from Ahmed Tarmizi, who is a nuclear physicist at the Malaysia Technology University. We asked him to comment on the level of radioactivity from the Linus plant. Have a listen.
Is so small that it is actually non-issue. We can compare quantitatively between, say, a mountain and a dust. That is the level of how minute small it is. So, using radiation or radioactivity as an issue is really riding on people's ignorance and fear. And to me, it's a very plus, using false information, to me, is very irresponsible, and it cannot be a basis for public policies.
We'd also like to note that Professor Tarmizi consults with the Malaysian government's Atomic Energy Licensing Board. So he says it's minuscule, but is any radiation good radiation? Or is
radiation, from what I understand from my science classes in the past, is that it exists everywhere. It's just a matter of the level. And
So then what are the safety concerns here?
well, I think it gets back down to the earlier point that I was making. The problem here, from what I can see, and from what I think many of my journalistic colleagues have been reporting, is that there is a breakdown of trust among Malaysians towards this project, where it has been shepherded through and approved without what the community argues is sufficient consultation. And so the government has had actually a fairly poor record, as some of your correspondents have been pointing out, in adhering to actually some of the best laws that in the world. I mean, Malaysia has got some wonderful laws, not only in the environmental arena, but also economic justice laws and so on. But more often is the case with the ruling coalition in the last decade or two, is that there have been many allegations of corruption and mismanagement that have actually broken down that trust, which is absolutely mandatory for any government to effectively govern, right? And I think this is the problem we get back down to. So given that, I would have thought the smart thing for the ruling coalition to have done when they knew such a controversial project might see light of day in Malaysia, was to actually engage the public in this and bring them into a discussion much more cleverly, and in a way playing contemporary politics of the 21st century, as opposed to the previous type of politics which is still played in Malaysia, where the ruler says things are on and everyone else has to fall in line. And of course that's not happening, as we can see on the streets.
Nick, what has the Linus Corporation done to put Malaysians at ease? I mean, we've seen, the numbers vary from 10,000 to 20,000 people marching for 13 days across the country in protest of the plant. That's a considerable number of folks. What are you doing to ease their worries?
Well, let me put this into two categories. One is what Linus have done and the facts around Linus. We received our permit to build in 2007. We had done a full environmental impact assessment, the same as you would do for any study anywhere in the world, including radiological impact assessments. Those were made available online. The only issue is that because this is located in the heart of a heavy industrial estate, which had already been permitted as an industrial estate for petrochemical industries with major chemical companies around the world, that's a good location for us. We did not require a public consultation because the individual approval was a subset of the broader public consultation done earlier around the major industrial estate. So that was fully complicit, and in fact we put those materials online, and those materials are available. We're so transparent as a company that if you walk up to our front gate, you will find, and I think we're one of the few companies in the world to do this, a full panel with all of the air emissions and the solids waste emissions standards and the actual standards going through the plant. We welcome the transparency, okay? Now, I also agree that we need more and more transparency. We were less prepared for the social media activism around this issue than we should have been. We've subsequently tried to be involved with Skype, with Twitter, with Facebook, with YouTube and so on, and respond in a way that is going to connect with that group of society that have the trust issue. But I think you've got to put the context of the walk and the Linus story within the greater emergence of civil society groups in their fledgling states in Malaysia. This is, I think, and I think we could probably agree on this, this is the emergence of a green political movement in Malaysia. Now, whether this is a valid cause for the emergence of the political green movement, I'm not commenting on. I think it's a healthy thing that Malaysian society is maturing to the point where there are civil societies groups with a voice.
And of course, you come from a country with a very strong green political movement. Mr. Tan, I know you'd probably like to respond to that.
Yeah, definitely. First, I would like to say that that plant was not built in a suitable place because it is built on a reclaimed peat swamp land where the underground water is merely 1 meter below the surface. Secondly, that plant is situated so close to the residential area that is within the 30 kilometers radius. There are 700,000 inhabitants living nearby. And thirdly, what Nick Curtis had just said was not true. We requested the meeting with Linus to be video recorded so that no party can spin the meeting. And then we actually request for the walkabout with the accompaniment of the management team, not without the accompaniment team. So a lot of things were spin, a lot of things were said in a unilateral way, contrary to the facts. Here, I'm here to clarify. Now, when Linus applied for the temporary operating license, it is required to present to the public for review some documents, especially the radioactive waste management plan. Linus had earlier on submitted this document with the title Waste Management Plan. It was rejected by the government. On the second submission, they used the same title. It was rejected until the third submission where they put the word Radioactive Waste Management Plan. Then it was accepted for public review. When it was put up for public review, we request that it be put online. It was not entertained.
Okay, we're getting a little too much chronology here, Mr. Tan. We've got about a minute left in the program. Kian, I want to get back to you, and we will pick this up in the post-show. But some say that the next Malaysian election is helping fuel this rare earth debate, and it's giving the opposition something to attach to and potentially get traction with. How much is politics involved in this debate that we're hearing here today?
I think there's a huge amount. But it also reflects, I think, the society disquiet on how a lot of public policy is being run. I think as a Malaysian who's looked at economic issues as a journalist, the Linus plant prima facie for me makes a lot of sense. It's necessary industrial investment, which Malaysia has been struggling to get in comparison to its neighbors since the Asian financial crisis over 10 years ago. But the problem clearly has been a failure of political process and implementation, and to some extent the quality of this particular project itself hasn't been adequately canvassed and discussed. So within that context, in this fevered climate as we head towards what could be a historic set of election results, everything the government does, it appears to be jaundiced.
All right, we're going to pick up on this in the post-show. Our thanks to Mr. Tan Boon Teat, Nicholas Curtis, and Kian Wong. As I mentioned, we'll pick this up in a few minutes. But first, Malika's got a few other stories that we're following.
Many around the world spend less than $5 a day on food, and this week, a U.S. city mayor is one of them. After a Twitter debate on whether nutrition is a government responsibility, Newark Mayor Cory Booker challenged skeptics to join him in a week of living as if they were on government food assistance. Booker is tweeting about his experience to his 1.3 million followers and even Instagramming photos of his food. He released this video after his first day.
It's very clear that if you are on a very limited budget, you have to put a lot more thought into what you're going to eat, where you're going to find food, and especially if you're on a program like SNAP, what places are going to actually accept my SNAP dollars.
Well, the mayor also posted a receipt of his food budget for the week, $29.78. I read your receipt and I think you're going to be hungry, tweeted Amy. Booker replied, "You may be right. We'll see." Our next lead was sent to us by MJ Martinez 11 on Instagram. A user from the internet forum Reddit writes, "In 2003, I found a thumb drive of family photos in the rubble of Baghdad, Iraq. I've never had the heart to throw it out. Thought I'd share." The post received more than 3,000 comments. Some hoped to find the whereabouts of those pictured, while others were struck by life before the US-led invasion. In a way, it is more harrowing than seeing pictures of burnt-out houses and corpses, the beauty and happiness of life found lost in a house of rubble. Well, what stories do you think we should cover? Follow us at instagram.com/AJStream and let us know. Your pitch could end up on a future show. Lisa?
All right, stay with us. The post show is next. Go to stream.aljazeera.com. Now, tomorrow, the Arctic sea ice is melting at record pace, and governments are eyeing the area as a new shipping route. We're going to dive into that issue in tomorrow's AJ Stream. Welcome back. This is the online post show at stream.aljazeera.com. We're talking about a rare earth refinery in Malaysia. It's causing a lot of controversy with environmental activists. I want to get back to the conversation. And Kian, in the 1990s, there was a rare earth plant in Malaysia that was run by Mitsubishi. It eventually shut down and never reopened because of public outcry. There were a lot of incidences of leukemia and brain tumors and birth defects, all anecdotally connected to this plant. What role is that playing with the opposition to Lynas? How much are people reflecting on what happened with Mitsubishi?
Well, to me, there seems to be somewhat of a direct connection in terms of folk memory that is connecting directly to this Lynas thing, partly because that occurred in a semi-rural Chinese majority village. This is also happening in a similar demographically defined area as well. But I think the critical difference this time is that the Lynas or anti-Lynas campaign and movement has been led by a Malay MP from the opposition, Fauzia Saleh, who's been very articulate. The opposition has clearly taken up this issue and run with it very well. And you've also had this huge social media and civil society outcry, which I think 20 plus years ago would have been far harder to create or to engender. So I think in this instance we really have a sort of perfect storm for these sorts of issues to coalesce around a controversy like this.
Nick, how much has what happened with Mitsubishi affected your endeavors in Malaysia, and how is what you're doing different from the Mitsubishi plant?
Yeah, I mean, archetypal stories are created in social systems. This is, in fact, a now almost mythology in Malaysia that Bukit Merah was damaging, and I'm not commenting on the rightness or wrongness of that, and that has influenced the current debate. It was 1992. There have been very significant technological improvements, technological measuring capacity. Let me just make one key point. Rare earths themselves are not toxic. They are used downstream in strong environmental control mechanisms. We believe we want to be the leader in global rare earths for a sustainable future. So we are committed in a different way to Mitsubishi's original plant, to the sustainability of our operation, and we've taken a huge number of precautions to do that. But the key difference is this: our material is sourced from a very specific, different geological deposit with a thorium and uranium content some 150 times lower than that of Bukit Merah. The measurable radiological impact of our material is less for a worker alongside our concentrate than permissible background radiation levels for the general public. There is no specific hazard. We've specifically chosen this deposit to develop because its ratio of rare earths to uranium and thorium molecules is extremely favourable to the rare earths. Bukit Merah came from a different source material. It came from the tin mining residues of Malaysia. Those tin mining residues contain a mineral called monazite. Monazite in Australia also occurs in our mineral sands deposits. It's illegal to crack open monazite mineral envelopes and take out the rare earths because you leave behind too much thorium. It should never have happened at Bukit Merah. Today it could not happen under the regulations. So we're not actually comparing apples and apples, although I understand that the emotional pull of that particular issue is an easy thing for people to project.
Well, Nicholas, there's a few questions here for you among our community members. This one from Skyview on Twitter, who says, Lynas was accepted into Malaysia when it was rejected in Australia, its home country. Something obviously is wrong, and you can, of course, refute and let us know the truth of that. But there's also a video comment here along the same lines. Have a listen to this.
Another important point that the Malaysian public raises is the location. Why Peninsular Malaysia when it's much more densely populated than any part of Australia? It raises the question of whether Lynas could not gain approval from the Australian government to operate a rare earth plant in Australia due to its stricter environmental laws. Whatever the answer is, the Malaysian government has not provided a satisfactory explanation, and the public is still demanding answers.
So why Malaysia and not Australia?
Well, first of all, let me refute the fact that we were not permitted in Australia. We were. This plant was permitted back in the 1990s and beyond in Australia to operate fully. I chose, when I took control of this, a different business model for the plant. The original business model I chose was to do as little as possible in Australia. Sadly, we're not strong downstream in Australia. We don't make steel mills out of our iron. We export it. We don't make a lot of materials out of the primary products that we produce. It's not part of the ease of doing business in Australia. We then thought we'd move this material to China, but because of export restrictions of the material, we then in 2006 looked for an alternative location. We did a proper global search. We see our business as a global business. I believe in free trade, and I believe in international trade, and I believe that investment dollars should go where they are best directed.
Well, Nick, does some of that unease in doing business in Australia have to do with the strict regulations, the 41 commitments that you'd have to meet to be able to do business there in Australia?
No, not at all. That is a total misrepresentation of why we went to Malaysia. Look, you only have to look at the outcry in the resources industry today about the high cost of doing business in Australia. The Gorgon field has blown out by $20 billion. Shell, Chevron and others are saying Australia is a very high cost environment. Unfortunately, we're not competitive downstream, and it's not just our industry that's demonstrating that. So it's got nothing to do with the environmental footprint. It has to do with global economics and the advantages Malaysia offers. Not the weakness of Malaysia, but the strength of Malaysia are what we focused on.
Mr. Tan, in addition to protesting and organizing rallies against Lynas, your organization has also already taken some legal action, and there is some that is still pending. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Of course, as mentioned, actually, Nick, this did not mention the whole story. Like what you said, there were 41 commitments attached to the conditions that allow Lynas to build a plant in Australia. And we felt that Lynas is taking advantage of the lax environmental laws in Malaysia and the weakness of the enforcement regulatory body in Malaysia. Therefore, we take it upon ourselves to challenge the government on this area here. We simply have no trust on the professionalism and the capacity of the regulatory body to police and to supervise world's largest rare earth plant, where they cannot even take care of Asian rare earth, which was only 1/10 the size of it. Therefore, we are challenging the decisions made by the minister who allowed Lynas to get its approval to go ahead and then try to run its operation for the first 2 years. So now we have entered the stage whereby it will be argued in court. It will be heard in February next year. Besides that, we are appealing to the appellate court, and it will be heard on this Friday on a new fresh application for stay on the temporary operating license. And there are other fresh groups of residents who will be putting up judicial review requests, try to stop Lynas from operating, although it is in operation now. In fact, the plant is plagued with various problems. The last we heard was that when it first started operating, it has to stop immediately 1.5 hours after they have started. So it shows the seriousness of what we have been telling the people and what we have been told by engineers who were involved in the construction of the plant, that the plant is not safe. Unlike what the employers were told by the Lynas, that there will be zero waste, the plant is safe.
Okay, and we should mention that Lynas actually has a defamation lawsuit against Mr. Tan's organization. So they are going to be doing some battling in court. Kian, I know you want to jump in.
Oh no, I was just curious to ask Mr. Curtis about the economics of this Lynas plant. I mean, that's something to me that in some ways has been obscured by this political controversy, and about what sort of actual material benefit it would bring to the Malaysian economy, aside from perhaps some skills, technology transfers, but also whether the great attractiveness might be this rather long, decade-long tax holiday, and also whether there really are the sorts of skills required in what I assume is a specialized project to hire them here.
Nick, we've only got about 30 seconds left in the show, so good luck.
Yeah, look, we're proud to be in Malaysia. We are proud that our plant is run by Malaysian. We think there are extremely strong engineering skills. Mr. Tan's exaggeration of a shutdown in commissioning is an example of the exaggeration which he's prone to on this issue. We think that we will run the world's safest and best rare earth plant, and we think Kuantan location with its infrastructure, its chemical factory plants around us, companies like BASF, Dow, and other major chemical engineering companies around the world, is one of the best locations we could find in the world. I think Malaysia is a very good investment destination. I understand that there is a political agenda and social issues are being raised as part of a political agenda here. We welcome the fact there's a vigorous debate in Malaysia.
All right. Thank you for a vigorous debate here on the stream to all of our guests today, and we'll look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow.